The first time it happened, I almost convinced myself I was seeing things. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, sun hanging low and golden over the New Mexico desert. I was walking home from work, same route I take every day, but as my shadow stretched out long in front of me, something felt off. I stopped, and my shadow stopped too, just like it should. But then I took a step to the left, and my shadow sort of dragged itself a second later. A lag. I shook my head, blamed it on fatigue, maybe the heat playing tricks on my eyes. I didn't think about it again, until the next day. This time I was getting out of my car. I turned to lock the door, and my shadow on the pavement wasn't facing the same way I was. I was facing my house, but my shadow was turned towards the street, its head tilted as if it were looking at something down the road. It was just for a split second. I blinked and it snapped back into place, mimicking me perfectly. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't just my imagination. Something was wrong. The third day was the worst. The shadow was taller, way taller. I'm about 5'10", but the silhouette stretching out behind me looked like it belonged to someone well over 6 feet, maybe even 7. Its limbs were too long, too thin, like a spider's legs. I started walking faster, trying to outrun it, trying to get into a place where there were no shadows. But it's New Mexico. The sun is relentless. It clung to my heels, this grotesque, elongated version of me. I felt a primal fear, the kind you feel when you know you're being hunted. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept all the lights in my house on, creating as few shadows as possible. I even taped over the little crack under my bedroom door. I called the police. I know how it sounds. "Hi, officer. My shadow is acting weird." I tried to phrase it differently. I said I felt like I was being stalked, that I was seeing things around my property. They sent a car out, did a slow patrol, and called back to say everything was quiet. "Probably just the wind, sir," the dispatcher said, her voice dripping with thinly veiled amusement. I felt like a fool, but the fear was real. It was a cold knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. The fourth night, that's when everything changed. I was in my kitchen, a glass of water shaking in my hand. My back was to the doorway that led into the living room, which was dimly lit by a single lamp. I could see my shadow cast on the kitchen floor in front of me. I raised the glass to take a drink, and my shadow did too. I lowered the glass. My shadow lowered its glass. Then I stood perfectly still. I held my breath, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. And the shadow in front of me, it took a step. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was frozen solid, my eyes locked on the dark shape on the floor. It took another step, moving away from the wall, detaching itself from me. It was no longer a flat projection. It was gaining dimension. The edges seemed to ripple, to pull away from the linoleum. It turned its head, slowly, deliberately, to look back at me. I couldn't see its face. Of course it was just a featureless silhouette, but I could feel its gaze. A cold, empty, ancient gaze. It wasn't my shadow anymore. It was something else. Something that had been wearing my shadow like a disguise. It stood there in the middle of my kitchen, a void in the shape of a man darker than any shadow I'd ever seen. It didn't mimic me. It didn't follow me. It just stood there, watching. I finally found the strength to move. I stumbled backward, my hand fumbling for the phone on the counter. But as my fingers brushed against the cool plastic, it raised its own hand, not mimicking me this time. It was a gesture of its own. It pointed a long, thin finger, not at me, but at the back door. I didn't understand. Was it telling me to leave? Was it telling me something was out there? My blood ran cold. I heard a faint scratching sound from the back door, a soft, rhythmic scratching, like fingernails on wood. My heart felt like it was going to explode. The shadow thing in my kitchen slowly lowered its arm and took a step toward me. Then another. It wasn't fast. It moved with a slow, terrifying grace. Each step was silent, but it felt like a drumbeat counting down the last seconds of my life. I screamed. I don't know if any sound came out. I just turned and ran. I didn't grab my keys, my wallet, nothing. I bolted out the front door and didn't stop running until the streetlights of my neighborhood blurred into a smear of orange and yellow. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I ended up at a 24-hour diner, collapsing into a booth, gasping for air. The waitress looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was. I never went back to that house. I called a friend from a payphone, told him there was a gas leak, and asked him to go pack a bag for me the next day. He said the house was fine, nothing out of place, no sign of a break-in, no strange shadows. He even joked, "Hey, you left your back door wide open, man." I didn't find it funny. I left town that week, moved across the country. I live in a city now, a place filled with tall buildings that block out the sun. I stay inside a lot. I prefer cloudy days. But sometimes, on a bright afternoon when I'm forced to walk outside, I'll catch a glimpse of my shadow out of the corner of my eye, and for a split second, I swear it's a little too tall, a little too thin, and I can feel it smiling. It knows I'm still afraid. It knows it can take its time, because a shadow can follow you anywhere, and this one is just waiting.